Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for The Secret to Being a $1 Million Writer: What Top Furniture Salespeople Do Differently. I'm Pete Theron, CEO of the Home Furnishings Association, and I'll be your host for this session, which is presented by the HFA. We want this to be a highly interactive session, and we encourage you to post questions throughout the conversation using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And we will answer as many of your questions as we can. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. This webinar is recorded and will be available on demand at myhfa.org/webinar. And in fact, most of the participation with our webinars are after the live event when people can access it over time at their convenience, and sometimes access it multiple times. We want to say thank you to Synchrony, our education thought leadership sponsor, for their dedication to the industry and support of these webinars. What separates a good sales associate from a true $1 Million Writer? It's not luck, and it's not just store traffic. It's a repeatable approach to connecting with customers, building trust, and confidently guiding the buying process from start to finish. Today's session is designed for both sales managers and frontline associates who want practical strategies to improve close rates, increase average tickets, and build long-term customer relationships that fuel sustained growth. Let's meet our panelists. Rob Ball has spent his entire life in the furniture business. With decades of hands-on retail experience, he now owns over 20 furniture store locations and is the visionary behind the Home Furnishings Association Sales Academy. As a sales trainer, Rob focuses on helping associates master the skills and mindset needed to consistently produce top-tier results. Michael Lewis brings more than 20 years of sales experience and leads training across 30 store locations for Levin Furniture, John V. Schultz, and Ashley Stores. He is passionate about developing high-performing teams and equipping sales professionals with the tools they need to succeed. Joshua Ortiz is the Furniture General Sales Director at Nebraska Furniture Mart of Texas. With over a decade at NFM, Joshua has grown through multiple leadership roles and now oversees sales operations at one of the nation's largest home furnishings retailers. In fact, I had the opportunity to visit their store just a couple of weeks ago, and it is one of the most impressive retail locations I've been able to enjoy in my career. I really have so much admiration for that retail location. Let's jump into what really defines a $1 Million Writer and how retailers can develop more of them on their teams. What are the key attributes that distinguish $1 Million Writers from average performers? Let's start with the mindset and the behaviors, the foundation of consistent high performance. So, gentlemen, what is the mindset that truly separates a $1 Million Writer from an average sales associate?
If I may start, from a mindset standpoint, I don't think it's news to anybody that $1 Million Writers are almost fanatically driven to succeed. Most of the $1 Million Writers I've had the pleasure of working with, coaching or managing, I mean, they start each day on the right foot. Their habits that they have within the four walls of the store are all in service of success. They have habits that they go through, daily processes, daily rituals that always keep them at a high level of performance. It starts from when they punch in and they hit, their bullpen, or they hit the office at their company, at their store. They are immediately checking in on if the sale has changed, checking in on stock, on different things they like to sell, or top sellers. But they're walking the floor to see if there's been any moves, if there's been any changes. They're familiarizing themselves with new items, and they are starting their follow-up immediately. They're checking in with past guests. They're checking in with current guests. They're working towards closing something that maybe is on the books but not closed yet. And they're making sure to foster long-term relationships with guests that they have sold recently. So from a mindset standpoint, I would say they're singularly focused on success, and they have the habits through experience and through learning that that foster that success, that drive that success from minute one of the day, they are focused in and dialed in.
I couldn't agree with you more, Michael. The very best associates I've seen have this routine in the hour before the front doors open that is inflexible. It just, they don't even know they're doing it half the time, but they are so disciplined before the day even starts. It's always so impressive to me. Well, Rob, Josh, what have you observed?
I agree with Michael. I think at the end of the day, grit and determination is the number one key factor to determining whether or not you're going to have $1 million writer or a two or a three or a $4 million writer. I know, one thing you said earlier, Pete, which kind of hurt my feelings. You said I had decades worth of experience, and then I looked at the in the thing here and I see all these gray hairs, and I see, what, that's actually pretty
Yeah,
true.
right there with you, dude.
Like, hey, when did that happen? But you're right. Over those decades, I look at a new sales associate, and I can tell within the first few minutes of meeting that new sales associate whether they're going to have the right stuff or not. And it does come down to attitude, right? I mean, to Michael's point, I can sit you in front of the HFA Sales Academy and show you video after video. You can shadow me, you can shadow Josh, you can shadow Michael until the cows come home. But if you don't have that grit and determination, it's just not an industry for you. Go find something that's going to that fuel that passion, right? And so for me, I'm sure these gentlemen would agree, my passion is helping customers. I love hearing the stories. I love hearing, about why they need home furnishings. Is it a new marriage? Is it a new kid? Is it a divorce? Is it a new home? Is it an upgrade, a downgrade? And so having a passion for people in sales, I think is almost a requirement to being successful. So I think what Mike said was absolutely perfect. And I believe that is at the absolute beginning of your journey to find out, is sales really for you? And is that personality trait what you kind of embody every single day? Because, sales is something that you're going to do, and you have to walk in the store every single day with that mindset, that determination that, hey, today is going to be a fantastic day, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes, what's happening at home, et cetera, what the economic conditions are going to be, and really having that grit and determination.
It's
Yeah.
funny, Rob. I used to use an analogy about what you were just referring to. You can tell right away when you meet someone whether that's what they're made for. I
Right.
don't know if many of you might, or some of you might remember the movie Chariots of Fire years ago, Academy Award winning film, but it was about a coach for Olympic caliber runners. And he was talking about how he chooses the runners he coaches. And he said, I can't put in what God left out.
Mm.
Just kind
Yeah,
of what you're
I
saying.
like that.
You can't set the speedometer on the person. You can only give them skills. You know.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that we're so aligned on these specific items because I think ownership is extremely important. When someone focuses on um, owning their experience and in turn focusing on their controllables. That's when I really see salespeople take off. It's so often that I see salespeople going from a mid-level to a high-level performer is when they shift their mindset and really accept the fact that their success will always be in equal proportion to their effort. Sales is not a desk job. Many other jobs are really about sort of just not falling below a minimum threshold of performance or productivity, but sales is kind of the exact opposite. So that mindset of my success is 100% reliant upon me each and every day. That's tough. That takes a special person, and I agree with you. It's not something you can easily teach.
So far we're all in violent agreement about kind of the core attributes. But you just talked about something that was a little bit different there, Josh. What mindset shifts have you seen that elevate someone's performance to the next level? That moment when they get it. Like and I know I've seen that. Someone who is floundering a little bit, and then one day they come to work and they're changed. And what do you see that kind of dictates that or describes that moment?
Yeah, well, for me, like as I mentioned at the outset, is it's all about ownership. When someone stops looking externally as the reason for their kind of poor results or poor performance, and really focuses internally and on the things that they can control, that's when I see salespeople just completely take off. It's always so frustrating to see someone who has all of this potential. They're just naturally likable. They're articulate. They're good at controlling, taking control of the sale. But for whatever reason, they just don't experience the results that they're looking for. And the second that they say, it's about me, what can I do differently? That's whenever I see them take off.
I agree with that. If I could top spin that for a second, I think, I always tell my new sales associates. So I put my sales associates in a couple different buckets, but the brand new sales associate, what I've recognized, and I've said this on a couple webinars in the past, brand new sales associates in their first 90 days outsell the more seasoned sales associates roughly by 20% because they're selling off of emotion. They're selling off of excitement. They're excited to be there, doing all the right things. They're greeting correctly. They're reapproaching correctly. They're doing all the right things. When they get into that rut, after that 90 days, 120 days, I call them insane, right? And you guys know what the definition of insanity is: doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. One of my favorite quotes, and you recognize with these new sales associates that they get into this rut. They might follow the wrong person, or they might follow a successful person, but their personality types are so wildly different that they're following the wrong teacher. They're following the wrong example. And so I tell them, stop being insane. You have to find your own way through sales. We can give you the basics. We can give you word tracks. We can give you, really the fundamental building blocks of a successful salesperson, but everybody's different. You got to make it your own way. And so change what you're doing. And I believe that as leaders in this industry, we have to be that tipping point to have that sales associate and say, hey, listen, you're not getting the same results that you used to get. And there's a reason for that. Let's deconstruct the sales process and let's really get into what you're doing with every customer, how you're greeting, reapproaching, discovering, the whole 9 yards. And let's just change it for the sake of changing it. Because if it's broken, let's fix it. And chances are that little tipping point, that little nudge in that direction will get the sales associate to be more intentional. And I believe what the answer that I would give on this question would be, when we can get our sales associates in that $1 million writer or that potential $1 million writer to be more intentional in their actions, we find that they experience a lot more success. And I believe that $1 million writers are intentional in everything that they do, even if they don't know that they're doing it, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. It does. Mike, what are your observations?
So, at the risk of sounding like I'm saying ditto to what they said,
Go ahead.
I very much so agree with being intentional and with operating with ownership. I have observed pretty much every $1 million writer I've been around, they operate like it's their name on the building. They think about everything in terms of they're putting the best foot forward. They're taking the most care of their guests. So I'd say as a baseline attribute of someone who is a high performer, that is very important. In day-to-day life, it can be seen in language. When you are around people who refer to it as that department messed it up, I can't handle that. That's not something I do. I think that's a pretty clear indication that they're not necessarily, they haven't made that switch yet.
Yeah.
When they start talking about what I can do better, how I can maybe facilitate this or smooth this out, even if it's not something I ultimately have the controls to, that's a very diametric and big, I think, mind shift for someone if they don't have it already. And the other thing I would add, I guess, in terms of people who aren't currently $1 million writers, but are seeking to become $1 million writers, people that are trying to figure out how best to, put forth their effort to develop that grit. I think it's kind of to what Rob had said. It is immensely important that they are willing to take a clear-eyed look at what they do and be totally honest with themselves and totally open to suggestions from others to realize where they are failing or where they aren't quite hitting the mark. That's step one. And then step two is to firmly decide and get almost a mission statement for what it should look like. Again, similar to what Rob said, but almost decide, what would a $1 million writer do? What would a high performer do in this situation? And then do that thing. And it's kind of like fake it to make it. When you decide to do what your image of that performer would do, eventually you're just doing it. It becomes a habit. It becomes the way you do things. It becomes part of your daily ritual. There used to be those bracelets that said WWJD. Instead, it should say WW MWD. What would a million dollar writer do? But that's kind of a shift to get into that mindset, to get into being a performer, is to take a long, hard look at what you do, figure out what you should do, and then make that shift.
I agree with every point that all of you made. Last week, I had the opportunity to visit a truly elite top 50 retailer in South Carolina, and their sales leader said something to me that I thought was so simple and so powerful at the same time. He said the top salespeople, when you have one, they never talk about the fact there's no traffic. Even if they had one up all day long, they talk about how they optimized that up. Because you don't worry about the things you can't control. You can't put cars in the parking lot. So, I mean, you can over time and build a base, but that simple story to me was so powerful. I was so impressed by it. Are top writers born with natural talent, or can the habits be taught and developed regardless of some innate gift of sales?
If I
Yes.
may. So it's some would call them A, some would call them B, right? So you can't, we can't teach anybody to have the right personality or the right drive. So you can be born and or learn certain personality types and skills before you make it to us, and you'll be further down the path. I do, however, believe that in order to be a consistent million dollar writer, it's more than just talent. It has to be that mindset. It has to be that effort. It has to be the rituals and the habits, because in order to maintain consistency, you have to be almost diabolical in your willpower to do so. You can be born more gregarious. You can be born maybe funnier than the average human, and that will help. You know, it's hard to be a total introvert and also be a salesperson, but not every extrovert is going to be a million dollar salesperson. They're further along the path. They have some qualities already that make it easier,
Yeah.
but will can trump skill a lot of the time, because your will to perform will get you to the place where you are a lifelong learner, where you are examining your process and throwing out which doesn't work and finding new things. But it's column A, column B, but I put more weight in column B.
I
Yeah,
agree.
sorry to interrupt you there.
Go
I
ahead,
agree.
Rob.
So I think it's like three different types of people, right? So you have the natural born salesperson, you have a process oriented salesperson, and then you have people that should not be salespeople, right? If you can't follow a process, you don't have the will or the way. To your point, Mike, this isn't for you. Go find something that instills some enthusiasm and excitement, and hone that passion. But we found a lot of success with people that are not extroverts, that are borderline introverts. I mean, and I'll tell you, I had a gentleman that came and worked for me years ago, and he was a caricature artist, which you would think that those people are kind of extroverts, but they really weren't. I mean, they would just sit down and people would walk up to him and get their caricature drawn at Universal Studios in Orlando. And I was able to teach this individual a process. And in a store that did like 2.2 million with 5 sales associates, he wrote $1 million of it, over $1 million of it. Went on the trip, got the watch, the whole 9 yards. And so I believe that if you're a natural born salesperson, you can take those skills to the next level. There's no doubt. But if you're looking at, and I'm talking to all the sales associates that are probably finding themselves not having a lot of success right now, and you're looking at somebody and you're saying, you know what, that person's so outgoing, they're cool, they're funny, they look good, they smell good, and the customers just flock to them. I can tell you that there's a way to become a $1 million writer without being that person. You can be an introvert and absolutely sell 1 million, 1 million 2, 1 million 3, and all you have to do is follow a process. And some of those individuals, believe it or not, are so good at following a process that they actually outright those natural born salespersons. Because to Michael's point, if we can get them to follow a process and then find the kind of common traits that find success, well, then they're going to duplicate it like clockwork. Somebody like me, who, yes, I'm probably a natural born salesperson, good talker, whatever, I have a very hard time following a process. And so if I have success with one customer, I have a hard time duplicating it because I'm winging it half the time, right? And so I do believe that if you can follow a process and you are an introvert, you can find a lot of success, especially in this industry, because it's such an intimate purchase. It's not high pressure sales. It's a lot of follow up. It's a lot of follow through. It's a lot of calling after delivery. It's a lot of those touch points where if you're just almost an empath and you're empathetic to the consumer, you're going to whoop everybody's butts. You're going to do extremely well. You just got to hone that skill and do the right things all the time.
It's funny, Rob, the phrase natural born salesperson, it's funny. I have seen a phenomenon time and time again. The extraordinarily charismatic, outgoing, high energy person, everyone would call them a natural born
Right.
salesperson. And that actually gets in their way because they are so dependent on their charisma that they don't do the work. They're just
Right.
like, I could charm, they don't even realize they think it sometimes. I can charm anybody. I could sell iced Eskimos. I got this.
Right.
Sometimes that's an obstacle for them because they don't
Right.
feel like they have anything to develop. Like, I'm here. Everybody say thank you.
If
Okay.
you think about that person that's a great natural born salesperson and they write $1 million and they don't know how they did it, right? But they're just talking, taking customers off the door and they're selling everybody that walks in the door. But think about this, even a top $1 million writer, their closing percentages are going to be, maybe 30, 40%, maybe a little higher depending on the market. That means they're walking half of those customers that I can guarantee you are going to buy furniture in the next 90 days. If you have a customer that walks into your store, I mean, when was the last time anybody did that and didn't buy furniture besides us, right? Because we're in the industry. When was the last time anybody did that and didn't buy furniture within 90 days? I've never done it. You know what I
Right.
mean? My wife's never done it. My family's
Better
never done
things to
it.
do with your time. I mean,
Exactly. You got things to do with your time. And so $1 million writers, they're so good off the door that they waste a lot of ups. They're not following
yeah.
up. I mean, try to teach somebody that makes, two, $300,000 a year selling furniture and say, hey, you should be really following up with some of these customers. They're going to laugh at you. But if you can teach a process to somebody and really hone that in, they're gonna kick some serious butt on the sales floor.
Yeah, to your point, Peter, and to what Rob just said, it has been my experience that some of the most charismatic, easy breezy, natural salespeople are the most streaky. By the end of
Yeah.
the year, they might hit a mill, but they'll have a whole week where they just tank, or they're always good on Saturdays, but they always stink on Tuesdays. They're very up and down because it's so much about how they're feeling that day. Did they wake up on the
Yeah.
right side of the bed?
What energy they're getting from the floor
Right,
that
yeah.
day.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
versus with the process, you're ensuring with a process, one of the best things about a process is you're ensuring that your worst effort is still good. You're raising your basement up to a certain level and you're raising your ceiling up too.
Well,
But
that's
then
a
the
great way
trick
to put it.
becomes from a percentages standpoint, everybody's getting a good shot. Everybody's getting the full show. Even if you don't connect quite as well with them, you're still giving them the full presentation. You're still giving them, the best shot.
Josh, what daily disciplines? I mean, we've talked so much about daily disciplines and routines. What daily disciplines and routines have you observed in the people who are truly elite?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but it's being disciplined about their kind of pre-store opening routine, I think is so critical. Managing their pipeline orders, identifying open opportunities, prioritizing follow-ups, making sure that they clearly understand the store's promotions and potential value propositions. Um, all of that happens well before the doors open. And the best salespeople are so disciplined about it, even to the point where one of our top salespeople, he would not allow us to have a one-on-one or our monthly kind of touch bases while the store was open. So he got all of his stuff done before the doors open, and then from there on, it's all about prospecting and closing. And so that level of discipline, not only did he carry himself with that at work, he was kind of that person, in his personal life as well. And so I think that to everyone's point here, just like great athletes, some are born with it, and then some just put in the work to be great. And I think discipline is so critically important.
I think that athlete analogy is great. It's amazing when you read the story from time to time of the guy who just made the all-star team but got cut from his high school team. I mean, those stories are amazing to read. I enjoy them. Let's kind of shift gears and start talking about engagement. What are the most important questions top writers ask early in the customer interaction?
So, if I may, from a generic standpoint, we would call them open-ended questions. But one of the most important things that top writers do as quickly as possible is get their foot in the door. They get the customer to see them not as a salesperson, but instead as George, Jim, Jane, Kim, whomever, who they can talk to, that they can hang out with for the next hour, the next half hour. I think the top writers, number one, their approach is always open, it's always inviting. And when they greet someone, they make that person feel welcome. That person feels that the top writer is happy to see them. When they transition to the discovery phase, the explore phase, we all have different, phrases we use for it. They ask questions that are well thought out, that feel genuine, that tie to what do you want and why do you want it? Not as blunt as what I just said. Obviously, it's going to be conversational, it's going to be humorous, but they ask open-ended questions, they collect information, and then they demonstrate the fact that they're listening and that they understand. They find out what, because that's the measurables, what room, what color, what size, what feel, what functions, but they also find out why. And the why is the more important purchase driver. The why ties back to the type of memories the customer will make in that room. And the main reason why they are replacing the old set or expanding a current set, the why is the real purchase drivers. If you can speak to the why when you make recommendations, you can tickle them in the best possible place to have them imagine the merchandise in their possession, in the room,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. So they fairly quickly get to those conversations in a very open way. They talk a third as much as they listen. So the customer feels heard, feels seen, and feels that they're talking to someone who's more like an acquaintance and less like, they have bad connotations sometimes with salespeople. They get past that quickly in the way that they ask the questions and how they listen.
So would you say that elite salespeople uncover true buying motivations rather than just surface level needs?
Right.
They're able to get deeper into the customer's motivations. I mean, how is that how you would describe it?
I would. So when we ask questions of a customer, the main things we're uncovering are what. So what do you want and why do you want it? And a lot of folks who are average performers or lower only get to the what. They find out what room, they find out what color, they find out what size, and then they lead a tour through the store of what may or may not match. The sales associates that spend a little further to find out the real reasons, they narrow down the whole floor mentally before they've ever shown something to maybe a handful of sets, and they can confidently say to the guest, based upon everything you just told me, I got 4 sets in mind that should fit the bill. Let's go check one out. And they are taking control of the transaction so much quicker. They're building trust, and they're kind of flexing on the guest, right? They're flexing on what command they have of their floor and what command they have of the conversation. So the guest feels that this is a person I can take this journey with within the first 10 minutes if it's done right, first 5 minutes even. And then they are better able to get right into the nitty gritty and then build the sale because they're collecting yeses much quicker.
Completely agree. How are these the steps you just described? So you're prepared to show things to the customer that really match what
Right.
their core needs are, not just what they tell you. Is that a credibility builder?
For
And Rob,
sure.
how do you think about that?
Sorry.
Rob.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
Sorry about
How
that.
do
I
you
thought you
think
were talking
about
to
that
Michael.
part?
So yeah, I absolutely right. It absolutely builds credibility. And so, I was thinking about this question the entire time, Mike was talking there, and I agree with everything that he said. I want to take it just one step back, if I can, Peter. as a professional salesperson, we have to understand what the purpose of interacting with the customer is when they walk in the door. It has to start there because a lot of people go and they say, okay, well, I'm greeting a customer to make them feel welcome or to find out what they're there for or all this stuff. I don't think that that's true. For me, if I'm going to greet a customer, what I want to do is engage in a meaningful conversation with them. That's it. My goal is to engage in a conversation that does not end up in a just looking. And if it does, I know how to combat that. And take it one step further. As a professional sales associate, put yourself in the mindset of a doctor, and you're going to visit a doctor, and a doctor, hey, how you guys doing? What's ailing you right now? And you tell them what's ailing you, and they say, you know what? Let me Google this real quick, or let me go to my website and find out what we got for this. No, what customers are looking for is the same thing you're looking for when you go to a doctor's office. You're looking for certainty. You're looking for that sales associate to be so confident in their ability to make their house a home that that customer feels certain that they're in the right place to begin with. And a lot of the time that a sales associate, especially $1 million writers, they're very confident. They understand what they need to do to convey that they can solve their problems. And so if you're hemming and hawing, or you're not sure what the promotion is, or what the price is, or how much the nightstand is, or how much it goes from a queen size to a king size, it's important that each and every one of you takes the time to become that jujitsu black belt, to get your doctorate degree in furniture sales, so that way you can project that certainty. Product knowledge does not sell furniture, ladies and gentlemen. I'll tell you that straight up, right? As somebody that has a long career that knows very little about furniture, but what product knowledge does is it builds that confidence to project certainty to the consumer that what they're buying is the right thing. What Mrs. Jones is looking for her, first home or her third home is somebody that can tell her and reassure her that she's making the right buying decision. And it starts at the very beginning by engaging in meaningful conversations about the products and services that you provide. However, you can get there to get that customer to open up to you and just talk to you instead of giving you the Heisman stiff arm. That is what the $1 million writers do. If you look at it, a lot of $1 million writers, you'd be like, man, you barely talk to them about furniture and you're shouting at them. Yeah, that's very true. Why? Because the furniture is a byproduct of the conversation. That's how we monetize the relationship. But the goal is the meaningful conversation in the relationship. And that's how you see $1 million writers that have customers come back in time and time again, because they might just shoot the customer a text and say, hey, how's that bedroom set working out? Or, hey, I know that you're a Bears fan. Did you see this guy got traded? I just got an alert on my phone just 5 minutes ago. Did you see that? This is how you build massive relationships to where the customer no longer thinks about your brand. I don't want any customers to think about Hometown Furniture or the furniture outlets in my stores when they need furniture. I want them to think about Rob Ball. I want them to think about Michael and Josh and Peter. That's who I want them to think about when they need furniture.
Josh, what
Yes.
are, in your observation, what are common mistakes associates make during the discovery phase? The mistakes that limit their success in that engagement?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I see is, I guess, what you'd call talking someone out of the sale. Sometimes, as we've talked about, those kind of gregarious salespeople, they really want to fill some of the empty space, and they don't focus enough on really listening to the customer. And so that's why I really like that Rob kind of talked about connecting what a salesperson does to deeper meaning and deeper purpose. We tell our people, or our kind of motto at our company is that we improve people's lifestyles. And so when you go into it with that motivation, it becomes less about making the sale, which leads to talking yourself out of the sale, or information dumping, or whatever it might be. You really focus in on, why is the customer here? Not just what happened. So not just the trigger, but the reason why it matters to them emotionally. And so I think really honing in on that is a key for success.
Yeah, that's very true. When you think about this, when you I've never been arrested, so don't Google it. But I'm teasing. But if you think
Interesting
about this,
segue, but
if you're getting arrested, right? You read your Miranda rights, and what do they say in those Miranda rights? Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law, right? And so I don't see a lot of issues per se with the discovery phase, because that's pretty easy. Really, it's more the presentation phase, because you gather all this information, but you don't use it in the conversation. You know they have 4 kids and you're showing them a white sofa. That's not smart, right? You have to go down the general path of what is this information going to be used for? You gathered all this information. So you got to look for the clues that are spoken and also look for the unspoken clues. And I think sales associates think too directly about the product and their commission and how they're going to get paid on this deal that they just start pitching product. No, relate that presentation phase back to what they said to you during the discovery phase. There's a discovery phase for a reason. It's not just to find out that they need a bedroom set. It's not just to find out they need a living room set. It's much deeper than that, right? It's how is it going to be used 80% of the time, right? It's a weird question, but it gets the customer to think about it. What do you mean 80% of the time? Well, no, in your living room, tell me what do you use it for 80% of the time? I mean, 80% of the time you probably don't have people coming over the house. I mean, tell me what that looks like. Oh, well, we watch movies. Okay, fantastic. So we know that they watch movies. Do you guys eat on it? Do you guys do this? Do you guys do that? Ask the questions, whatever ones feel important to you. And then you can ask the customer well, what's the other 20%? Tell me about your entertainment. Tell me about when you have Christmas and Easter and all these other holidays. Tell me about the other 20%. And I know to Josh's point, if I can connect the 80%, I have an 80% chance of me making a sale. But if I can get the extra 20%, what the best use is of that living room, dining room, bedroom, whatever it is for that 20%, I can make it 100%. I have a much greater propensity for me to make a sale and to work right through that closing phase of the sales process because the customer already told me this checks all the boxes. See what I mean?
Well, so we've talked a lot about building credibility, building trust, and as I always like to say, respect the decision that this customer is trying to make. Whether you're showing them a $500 sofa, a $5,000 sofa, or a $15,000 sofa, it's an important and scary decision for that customer to make, and so you really have to lay that groundwork in so many ways. But now that you've got a level of confidence and you've got a level of insight with this customer, and you think you really understand what their needs are, how can sales associates confidently guide customers towards higher value solutions without feeling pushy?
If I may, it kind of ties back to some of what Rob was just saying. If you do your discovery phase, your explore phase right, and you actually uncover the personal details and the real buying drivers, then you would never show something that does not fit with what they told you. If you show something that doesn't fit with what they told you, you lose all credibility immediately. And also, when you sell something, it's really about the value, and the value is it perceived to be worth what we're asking? It's not always actually the price, it's whether or not we built the value. And that comes back to personalized, correct feature benefit statements. So in my discovery phase, I'm essentially collecting ammunition to fire back at you later on when I tell you why it's good for you. And if I ask the right questions, I'm going to collect the right information. And I need to make sure that that information is stated back to you. I sell you on why this is good for you with your own words. So this is going to be great for you for this specific reason to you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, that you told me about not 5 minutes ago, rather than generic things like, hey, it has cup holders. People love those.
Yeah.
Hey, it reclines. People like to be comfortable. It has to be personalized to build the value. If you use the right feature benefit statements and you tie it back to the right discovered information, they should be willing to buy it for more than what the price tag says.
Well, Michael, I think you just opened up a whole topic that I think is so important and relevant to this question, which is value. You don't feel pushy if you are always talking about value. If you are able to say, this is worth that much money, you may or may not decide that's what your budget can accommodate. That's fine. But here's why this is the value is there for this, the value is there for this, the value is there for that. You're not talking about prices. You're talking about this product is worth the money. It may or may not be the right decision for you today, but you can talk about it comfortably and confidently if you're talking about value.
Definitely got to read the room, right? I mean, that is key, right? If you're pitching a bedroom set that's $9.99 or $11.99 and you have one that looks similar to it at $49.99, you may show it to them. But what I was taught when I was very, very young is stop selling it after it's sold. Sell something else, right? And so I see a lot of salespeople that think, oh, I got to upsell, I got to upsell, I got to upsell. Sure. If there's a massive upsell opportunity and you feel like it's right and there's massive value to Michael's point, then yeah, pitch the value. Show them how they're going to get more benefit out of this sofa or out of this bedroom set than the one that they were interested in to begin with. But I think it's also important to not get commission hungry, because what you want to do is you want to sell this customer today, right? We want to influence this customer. We want to change this customer's life. We want to decorate their home today, but we also want them to come back and think about us tomorrow and not be oversold. And so I think that there's a difference, right? Upselling, right? Taking somebody with additional features and benefits from one sofa or bedroom set or dining room set to another one because there's value there and it solves problem. That's an admirable opportunity. But if you're thinking about commission, I'm going to tell you, don't do it. And really, the upselling opportunities comes into the ancillary products, right? Warranties, additional nightstands. As an industry, we do a terrible job selling nightstands as an industry, but you got a 200% chance really of selling nightstands. Look for those opportunities to sell the extra chair, to sell the protection programs, to sell the table covers and the mattress protectors. That is a massive opportunity. And again, obviously, if there's value there, if the customer gave you some type of context clue where you can add those into the conversation and offer them to the consumer and add that value, then you're doing the customer a benefit and a service. But do not shop, really with your own pockets in mind. Think about that consumer and think about the relationship over the next 10 years you could have with them in home furnishings by selling them what they need and a little of what they want.
We're talking about a whole bunch of different parts of leading associates to being comfortable asking for more money in a
Right.
way that they feel like they're doing the right thing for the customer.
That's right.
Josh, certainly you have a showroom floor that has an enormous range of product. And we've talked a little bit about, how you can move the customer to only look at the products that most reflect what they've been able to tell you, and can you present more value? What simple strategies consistently improve close rates?
Yeah, as we again kind of said earlier on, I think one of the biggest things is establishing trust and credibility at the very beginning. I think the end of your sale, the last 5-10 minutes of your sale is going to be so greatly impacted by how you begin the sale. So how can we control the sales interactions by setting expectation, asking intentional discovery questions, establishing clear timelines, and then by establishing credibility, subtly discussing product features and benefits, using social proof. Most of my families lean towards this, or something along those lines. And then, of course, just being honest about trade-offs. What are they getting for this price, and what are they getting for the other price? All of those things, I think, go into establishing that trust and credibility. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you can do to ensure that you're going to be able to close the sale later. I think oftentimes we focus just a tad too much on, well, I just got to say the right thing at the end. And in reality, it's about much more than that.
That's a fascinating perspective. It's funny, we keep talking about the same things, which in so many ways is saying this is not a complicated process. It is, of course. It's a very complicated job, but in so many ways, the keys to success are not. They really are not. If someone wants to move, you've got a highly motivated associate. They've kind of got their feet under them. They're ready to take a leap. If someone wants to move from average to top tier performance in the next 90 days, where should they focus first?
I would say follow up. That would be my answer. Follow up and follow through, really. I don't even call it follow up anymore. I got to retrain my own brain, but I think following through with your consumer, right? So every customer interaction that we have ends in really two places, right? Either it ends in an objection or it ends in a transaction. And I will tell you, and I'm living proof of this, and I can tell you that these gentlemen here and knowing their backgrounds would agree with me. If you're not following up with the vast majority of your consumers, your customers, think about it. A customer gets into our store, they're gonna go shop somewhere else. That's the reason why. They tell you they're gonna go home and measure, they just lied to you. They tell you that they're gonna just looking, they're lying to you. They gotta ask their spouse. No, they don't have to ask their spouse. Maybe they do, but for the most part, the decision's already made. They probably just want to go get certainty somewhere else, right? So there's a lot of things that consumers say that are lies. But one thing I was taught very early and often is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. We have technology right here. We have CRM softwares that do most of the work for us. I know 20, 30 years ago, I didn't have any of this stuff. Right. I had to do it with a Franklin Covey day planner from Raymond and Flanagan that they gave us. And I would put down, call Mrs. Jones next Thursday. That's when she's supposed to be closing on her home. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And so, as a professional salesperson, you want to take your game to the next level, make more contacts to create more contracts. Sales is a contact sport. So, be in contact with your consumers as much as possible. They were looking at a dining room set. They got to go home and think about it. Had to go home and measure. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, would it be okay if I shot you a text with all of the dimensions and information on this? And if you need a couple days to make a decision, if it goes on sale, would you mind if I shot you a text message? That's called a verbal contract. I want that customer to say yes. Now they're telling me it's okay for me to just shoot them a text. Now I'm not going to shoot them anything else besides that dining room set, or maybe some other suggestions or something that may come in clearance. But I am going to stay in contact with that consumer to get them back into my funnel. Think about it. That customer is already familiar with you. That's half the battle. Your advertising department already spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to drive them into your store. And it costs you less than a penny to send them a text message after they leave your store. So follow up with your clients and you will make more sales. I guarantee it.
Michael, what do you think is that like the button you should push first in your intention to improve over the next 90
So,
days?
so I would hearken back to something I said earlier. The very first thing is to take a long, hard look at what you do currently with eyes wide open, with no ego, and figure out where you're failing, how often you're failing. Step two is kind of to make a mission statement to yourself, an agreement with yourself for what it should look like, how you want to do it, and then set out to do that thing. Like I said before, instead of WWJD, WWMWD, what would $1 million writer do? And I do think, to Rob's point, follow up is a phenomenal barometer for whether or not someone's doing it the right way. Someone that has really great follow up can only have really great follow up if they're opening the sale properly, if they're building relationships. So I know I keep coming back to talking about opening the sale, aka discovery, greeting people. I think most of us have probably seen Glengarry Glen Ross, ABCs of sales are always be closing. And the
Let's not
longer I
quote that too closely,
yeah, I
okay?
know. Nothing about coffee and everything else.
Yeah, got that. Yeah.
For a long, long time, sales was kind of a pyramid where all of the opening was the shorter, narrower part, and everything was supposed to be the close. And in order to be $1 million writer, you had to be smooth with your closes, and you had to have moves, and you had to have the right questions. And I think now it's the ABOs of sales. It's to always be opening. And to a point that Josh made previously, if you open properly, you almost just land in the place where the close is the next logical thing to do. And asking for the sale is easy because you built the symphony to that point. But I agree that follow up is a phenomenal thing to focus on because it means you did all the practices before that. But I would say on top of that, look at what you do, figure out what you should do, and move in that direction.
We keep coming back over and over because we keep talking about what are the next steps, and then we keep coming back to did you set the table properly? That's what the next step is always about. I mean, it's just fascinating to me that that's what we keep talking about, and all three of you keep talking about it the exact same way. I mean, it's just amazing.
If I may throw out a point, and I think it's partly why we all keep talking about that. A lot of people that are new to sales and even veterans of sales, like I said a minute ago, they think almost too hard about the close, and then they don't do it at all, or they do it in a clunky way, or they do it in a pushy way. Something I want everybody on this call to think about. It is my firmly held belief that 65 to 70% of the people you speak to in a day in your store can be sold. But the trick to selling them is to make them feel like they're not being sold. And I think that's why we keep coming back to how we open the sale and how we build the relationship, because it just gets massaged to a sale when they don't feel like you're selling them.
Yeah. Let's shift gears. I mean, we're already almost out of time, and I think the four of us could keep going on for another 2 hours. But Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the role of sales leadership. It's funny, sometimes you see showroom floor managers who consistently develop people into top writers. They've always got a bunch of people who are working at a very, very high level, while others don't. And so often they say, it's because I just don't have the right people. I brought in two new people, they didn't work out. Um, what do you think? What makes a sales manager consistent and elite at developing great sales teams, developing million-dollar writers?
If I may, this one, you're just saying so many things to me that I want to chomp all over. I think it's the difference between a boss and a leader, right? A boss tells you, they always tell you, do better, hit that number, close more people, and nothing else. Just you got to do. Versus a leader is out front leading. A leader leads by example. A leader leads by showing. And I think all of the most successful sales managers, sales directors, the people that bring along high performing teams, it's stand up practice. They sit down or stand up with those folks and they show them and they work through it. We should be practicing with each other, not practicing with our guests, to quote someone who's very wise in my company who said that not that long ago. So they do it with them. They do skill
Yeah.
practice. They do role plays. And back to sports analogies, the best home run hitters on earth, yeah, they might have a certain amount of inborn talent, but they take their cuts. They get their swings in. It's repetition, repetition, repetition until it's muscle memory. So practice it. Stand up and practice how to do the thing. Show them a better way, and then practice it over and over again.
I had somebody fairly recently, to Mike's point here, it's beautiful. I had somebody very recently tell me, my store would be doing better, to what you said earlier, Peter, if I had better people.
Ugh.
And I said, well, hold on a second. Like, take a breath here. So I pulled everybody together in a room and I made it a mandatory TO. Every single person that comes through that door needs to be introduced to the store manager. And that store manager no longer has an office, by the way, because we have cameras in there and we see that offer. Listen, if you're a sales leader and you have an office, you're not a sales leader. You're an office leader, right? If you're sitting down, you have a chair, nothing happens in a chair, right? It's a dance floor. You can't dance in a chair, right? And so a professional sales manager, or sales leader needs to be on the floor with the people that are writing the checks to the business. And that's our sales associates, that's our sales professionals. And if they're not getting it done, well, where were you? Why weren't you there?
Yeah.
Why wasn't your other leaders there? Why weren't you interjecting yourself and introducing yourself to that customer? We call it, you think about car dealerships. Now, this is some people might think this is pushy. It's not pushy. I promise you it's not. In our stores, and not every store, but most of our stores, especially if they're struggling in sales, when I introduce the manager walk, where as that sales associate walks past the desk or a counter or the customer service area, wherever that manager tends to congregate, they have to introduce their clients to the manager for a couple different reasons. Number one, to add additional credibility and certainty to that conversation. Hey, listen, my name is Rob. This is our store manager, Michael. He's been in the industry for 20 years. If there's anything that goes wrong and I'm not here, please call Michael. He's going to be able to help you out. That just adds a little bit of credibility, but that also introduces that sales leader to that person so they can come by and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, how you guys doing? I know you guys were looking for a bedroom set. What have we found so far? If you find anything that just blew your socks off, and where are we at with this, right? I saw you guys checking out living room sets. How's Rob doing? I guess we'll keep another day. It's a corny joke. It makes everybody laugh a little bit. But as a sales leader, you have to get involved in the sales process. You have to get involved in the customer interaction. And honestly, that action alone will build camaraderie between your team with you and will obviously lead to more sales. But ultimately, what we're looking for here is to show our people that we can walk the walk. And when we got promoted to the sales leader position, it wasn't that we get to, I call it caping out, going to the back and hanging out. My job gets easier. No, my job is to carry more buckets of water because I was put in this position because I'm stronger than the average bear on the floor and I can carry more for my team. And so you think about that, like David Goggins says, who's going to carry the boats? Sales leaders, you got to carry the boats. That's who's going to carry the boats.
It's funny,
Yeah,
early in my career, I observed that occasionally an indicator of a great sales leader on the showroom floor is the one who's chronically late with their paperwork, chronically behind on
Yes.
this administrative task. Because it's kind of what you referred to, Rob. It's the ones who say, I'm never in my office. I never have time. I'm out. And half the time they're in a store that isn't that busy. I mean, but
Right.
they just, the only thing they want to do is be on the showroom floor, coaching in the moment nonstop.
And if you're
Yeah,
an owner that's on this call,
go
sorry to
ahead.
interrupt, if you're an owner
No,
on
go
this
ahead.
call, that it's important that you recognize this too. This is such a hot button thing for me because I'm just going through it now in my stores. If you're an owner in your store and you recognize a store manager purely because they get their inventories done on time, their reports done on time, but their numbers are not good, what are we recognizing here?
Yeah, no, agreed. Is it acceptable to always be behind on your paperwork and so on? No, of course not.
Right.
But it does tell you something about that person, which is valuable. What have you observed, Josh?
Yeah, I think what I was going to say is, what it comes down to, and I think what you're, seeing from someone who's sitting in the office versus being out on the floor is someone who manages inputs rather than outcomes. And that's what we really try and have our leaders focus on is not focused on the numbers or the metrics or, hey, you need to get your add-ons up or you need to sell more leather sofas or whatever it might be. We are really focused on the behaviors and the inputs that go into the customer experience. And the only way to truly know what's happening is if you are out there listening, watching, observing, etc. And so I just think that that's a huge mindset shift for leaders is when you forget about the results and really focus on the inputs that drive those results, that's where you're going to see the most success.
The very best retailers that I've had the opportunity to meet and spend some time with, one of the things that fascinates me is their CEO is obsessed with the customer experience. They talk about it all the time. They are so passionate about it. They really believe customer experience drives sales, not the other way around. And as basic as that sounds, I think the minority of people truly understand it. I um I had the pleasure to chat briefly with the recently with the CEO of the largest furniture retailer in our industry. I won't say who, but people could probably figure it out. What fascinated me was I just observed that I had just visited one of their stores and had a fantastic experience. He came back to me with four specific questions about very specific details about the customer engagement, the customer experience. What did I think? What did I see? What can I tell him? I'm like, this guy's the CEO of this massive company. He's talking about details on the showroom floor that it's so impressive that that's what they are motivated by amongst billions of dollars of revenue. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, historically in our industry, I think the mindset is one or the other. You either have a sales process that drives real top line sales and results or a great customer experience. And the best of the best focus on a customer experience that will drive those sales. So I think you're spot on.
Yeah, it's the
And, and,
difference
and I
between
certainly
complaint and
know that's
impediment.
how your company is driven. I mean, having walked the floor with your CEO, that's what he talked about the whole time. That's so impressive to me by as someone who is my favorite thing in retail is the customer experience. Um, Really quickly, and that's not a particularly core competency of our group right today, is somebody wants to get a lot better in the coming weeks. What's the single most important habit someone must develop to become $1 million writer? Say it in one sentence.
Yeah.
I'll steal from all of us a minute ago. I think we settled on sort of follow up as a great thing because it's it's not only a really important habit or practice, but it also is a barometer of the fact of doing everything else well also.
But Josh, what do you observe? Or
Yeah.
what would be your advice?
Well, mine's just kind of a quick hitter and a lot more tactical. I've been kind of harping on this one, but there's one super high yield question that I have seen change people's sales trajectory, and that's asking, have you seen something you liked online? I love that question so much because you get a clear understanding of style, price, color, size, all in one question. So I wanted to give everyone just one small, very tactical thing that they can do right now that I think will work wonders.
Rob, and you've got about 20 seconds.
Yeah, I go back to the follow-up thing, not to pile that on there, but follow-up is key. If you have to follow up with your clients and make that a part of your everyday repertoire, or ultimately you're leaving a lot of money on the table, tons of it.
We could, this has just been a fantastic conversation. Unfortunately, I've got to wrap things up at this point. First of all, thank you so much to all of you for, first of all, making yourselves available. I know how busy all of you are, and just your extraordinary participation today. We'd also like to thank Synchrony for sponsoring our webinars, and thank you to our panelists for sharing practical insights that real-world strategies can connect to every single day in very practical ways. Becoming $1 million writer, as all of us have been saying today, isn't about luck. It isn't about having a personality. It is about discipline, mindset, mastering the fundamentals every day and practicing them. We hope today's discussion gave you tools that you can immediately apply to improve. Our next webinar is Thursday, March 19th. And in a very similar topic, this webinar will be about coaching that closes, how to develop high-performing sales associates. We've talked about what the characteristics of one are. We're going to spend a lot more time talking about how you as a sales leader can develop them. Until then, thanks for tuning in and trusting HFA to support your success.